To this Tuesday edition of the MSP Initiative Live. We are joined today by Paul from Redkey Solutions out of White Plains, New York area. But before we get there, we do have, we're coming into the end of the summertime here. So a bunch of events about to kick off, right? And we know that that's great for people who have been itching to get out. So we just completed a Channel Strong tour in the Northeast, and our next round is in the Southwest. So keep tuned in Tuesdays and Thursdays here at MSP Initiative Live so that we can give you some tips on some upcoming information, as well as the mspinitiative.com website. There you'll see a sessions tab. This session and all other sessions we've ever done since, I guess, March of 2020 when we started these are all there. You can download, fast forward, rewind. You'll also see the Channel Strong page, so that'll give you information on the upcoming tour. And lastly, our monthly vendor giveaway, where all you need to do is throw your name in the hat and you could win one of 10 prizes that some of our participating vendors are just literally throwing out there for the fun of it. So no purchase necessary, just sign up to win. If you don't buy that lottery ticket, you're not in the pool of potential winners. So now that all of that housekeeping is out of the way, Paul, welcome to MSP Initiative Live. How are you doing today, my friend?
Pretty good. Thank you, George. Nice to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So for everyone that has never run into you at an event, on the street, at Starbucks down the road, why don't we give everybody a little bit of background on you, how you got into the business, and how about your company a little bit?
Sure. All right. So my name is Paul Grenci. I did not start off as a tech. I got an environmental engineering degree back in the 90s, and I really just didn't want to do that kind of work. It was the tail end of Windows for Workgroups, 3.11 for those of you folks who remember those days. Email was combating with pink slips and inter-department memos. That was 95. So I got my start in 95, worked at big companies like Philip Morris and ADP and Kraft Foods, and ultimately decided I didn't like working for other people. So 2001, started my own gig. Met a business partner that ended up forming Redkey Solutions in 2007. And now we're going strong, 10, 15 years later, with a pure breed MSP based out of the New York suburbs. So it's actually been a lot of fun.
Listen, fun is half the battle, right? If you're not having fun, then you may already be in the wrong place, right?
Indeed.
So would you just to put some bumpers around, things so that people can understand how you're responding to things? How many customers do you manage today at Redkey? What's your prototypical customer blueprint? Just kind of give people an idea, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely qualifies my answers, right? So we have just under 2,000 endpoints. We're just above 50 clients, and we're a pure breed MSP. So everybody's on unlimited plans. So that gives you an idea of the scope and size. We're an 18-person team, about 8-9 people in the service area, and everyone else is pro services and support and staff and sales like that. Our ideal client, interestingly enough, we go up to 300 in size and as small as 5 in size. So size is not really the thing that matters the most for us. It would be operational maturity. How much business experience do they have? And do they think they know how to run IT better than we do? Because if the answer is yes, we're really not very interested in doing business with them. If they've learned that they need a partner they can trust and lean on and take their advice, that's the kind of client that we like to work with.
Got it. So is it safe to say that you don't do a lot of co-managed situations?
That's an interesting question. We actually do really well on co-managed, and we didn't know how to get that off the ground, to be honest. We kind of fell backwards into it. But what we ended up doing is, we slice out our tools. We're an automate shop, and we do ConnectWise manage and all of those and like control. And what we did is we sliced out those tools for our on-prem contacts. And then we basically tell them, look, we're going to handle all the commodity stuff, right? We're going to migrate them for Office 365. We're going to do all the installs and line of business upgrades. But you, Mr. On-prem IT guy, you're going to go be your superpower, whatever that is, whatever you do really well in that organization, we're going to make sure you get to do it 40 hours a week, right? So what starts off as an adversarial relationship, and I know a lot of MSPs talk about it like that, it doesn't have to be. but you do have to get over some hurdles to make it work.
100%, 100%. So let me ask you this. What is, like, when you go out there, right? And you're, obviously sales and marketing is a big part of the game, right? What's your wedge to get in the door? Is it cybersecurity now? Is it, hey, let's stop the headache of trying to do this on your own and duct tape this thing? Is it like what's, I mean, maybe it's multiple things, right?
It's topical.
What is working for you?
Well, so I mean, what worked for us was we were in a Kaseya shop, right? Mm-hmm. So when that thing happened and it affected a lot of people in our area, we got to send out a blast that said, is your IT department falling down? We didn't say why, right? We struck while the iron was hot. We're like, look, you having trouble getting responses? And people were, right? So what we've done over the last 3 to 5 years is we've built a pretty big, pretty relevant list, right, of people to communicate with. And then we do very timely, very specific micro targets, right? So we're always getting out there when something hits the news so that they can think about us, because we need to be on top of their mind when something finally pushes them to make a change, right? And you never know what that's going to be. You never know when that's going to happen. So they need to constantly be hearing about Redkey so that when it's time, maybe we call those Redkey guys. Let's see what they're about.
So when you built up that database, was it more, like how far did you go, right? Was it just down the street? Did you go 50-mile radius from your place? Like, how far?
Gotcha. Yeah, so a couple of iterations. I mean, we're within 35 miles of New York City. So if we do a 50-mile radius, that's a lot of people. And for those of you that might be listening that know the New York area, just because we're within 35 miles doesn't mean it doesn't take us 3 hours to get there. So we had to play that really carefully. But so that is kind of what we did. We hit a radius around New York City. We curated, we integrated Salesforce and Bedrock and got it flowing into ConnectWise. Believe me, not all that easy. There are other ways to do that. There are services and firms that can kind of give you a leg up. But that's what we did. So we got ourselves a pretty wide net of, like I said, over 10,000 folks. We prune it and we add to it all the time. And we try and hit it with topical references. So like when the pipeline got hit, we were talking about MFA because they weren't using MFA on that account, right? So we try and map what people see in the news to how it impacts their organization. And sometimes there's a big gap and people don't know how much that relates to them.
No, 100%. I mean, the news is definitely, we've had a few people on here, different people with different ideas on the best way to tackle these things. But some of the guys that have come on MSP Initiative have said, hey, put it on every billboard, every TV screen, every email, send that message to everybody. Right. And I'm like, okay. I was like, one person's pain is another person's reward, I guess. But I mean, it's definitely a combination of, I think a couple of things have hit, and we're going to just go down this road for a second, between some of the insurance carriers basically sending out notices saying, if you don't have this, we're not insuring you, to the news headlines, right? Pipeline, Kaseya, SolarWinds, everything in between. And then just generally people talking about it more in the day-to-day conversation, like it's more mainstream than, oh, this is like a tech thing, right? I think like the last 6 months has made it, if you're positioned properly, and listen, there's a slimier way to do things, I think, than being upfront. I mean, everybody has different marketing tactics. Right. I'm not a fan of all of them, but there's a way to do it where you can get the information out, yet still not kick a guy while he's down too.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Look, there's a lot of competition in this market for us as well. But there's also, like I said earlier, a lot of clients. So most of our competition is pretty friendly. You know what I mean? Like we'll trade back and forth here and there. Sometimes we've got a client that we know isn't a particularly good fit for us. And we know that there's another MSP that's got a slightly different way of doing things, and we'll pass them right along. So, it goes both ways. There's some animosity here and there, but mostly it's pretty friendly, competitive.
Well, that's actually a good point, right? Because I say forever, the castle mentality, right? Like, here's the moat, here's alligators, don't touch me, we're competitors. And I'm like, dude, there's a lot of people out there. There's enough business out there for everyone. Yeah. Like, I don't know if co-opetition, friendly competitors, there's a lot of terms you can throw in there, but like
co-opetition, I like that.
How often are you saying, you know what, I may not be the right fit for you, but hey, George down the street might be able to help you out?
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely part of the repertoire now. And to be honest, if you want to be a thought leader in your industry, you want to have an answer for someone, even if you're not the answer, right? Like I'm not only going to talk to you if you're going to potentially be a client. Let me get you where you need to go.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So let's talk about this, right? So, you mentioned the Kaseya thing. I know there's a couple of people that are on this call that have pretty robust feelings about the topic,
I'll
I'd say.
bet.
Like, you mentioned you're using ConnectWise. I mean, they're one of the big guys in the sandbox. So listen, it almost seems like everyone is at risk, right? I mean, there's certain things that you can do to protect yourself, and there's certain things that you have to rely on the vendor to say that they're doing their part for their stuff, right? It's very seldom they're going to let you walk in the door and start looking at their stuff. So, what's your opinion on making sure that the people upstairs from you, right, the vendors upstream from you, right things?
I'd say there's really two-pronged approach to that. First is I am involved at the leadership level where I have a monthly conversation with folks over at ConnectWise, and it's owners only, and it's top level stuff, and it's feedback about where they're going after their PE acquisitions, how they're merging their different business units, how they're addressing security, right? So you have to have a dialogue. If you're not telling them what they're not doing right or what your concerns are, you've got no business expecting them to take care of it, right? So that's the first part. The second part is I don't trust them. I don't. I mean, I can't afford to trust that they're going to do what they say they do, because I saw what happened. Imagine if all 1,800 of my endpoints got locked up at the same time. Well, I'm imagining that now. Like I'm thinking about that. Okay, well, holy crap, how do I turn this from a 3-week absolute disaster, right, where I lose clients faster than I can even call them, to a minor blip where I go, okay, everybody, no big deal. Your stuff's all right here. Just log into your web instance, right? Your OneDrive has all your files and your emails in Office 365, and you're still good, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm going through worst case scenarios, and I'm trying to build a way out, assuming that everything goes wrong. That's exactly how we're going about it. Because I agree with you, it's going to happen.
I mean, even Microsoft has their own. I mean, they've had
absolutely
a half dozen outage related. Could have been an hour, could have been 4 hours. Sometimes Apple goes up. I mean, it happens. It happens.
You need redundancy
more often than we want. Yeah,
it totally does. So one of the funny things, I mean, if you might recall, you've been in the business for a while. When cloud first came out, right? Everyone was like, "Oh, get all your backups up into the cloud," and everyone was like, "Yay, cloud redundancy!" And now everyone's like, "Holy crap, get my stuff out of the cloud, because what if I can't get to it?" Right? So it's come full circle. Now you've got on-prem stuff, you've got stuff in the cloud, and you've got things syncing down, you got things syncing up, you've got air gaps, right? You got to make sure that they can't delete your backups if there's a malicious actor in there. So you got to air gap things. And believe me, George, there are easier businesses to be in right now than this one.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I've actually heard several people, whether it be online through the forums or just talking to people at things like, by the way, before I get any further, thank you very much for lending us your parking lot. I know it wasn't easy. I know it wasn't easy. I know we had
to work,
but we Paul and company was very gracious to let us borrow his parking lot for Channel Strong. It was the very last stop in White Plains, New York. It was a great day, by the way. Great
weather. It was awesome. We had a lot of fun.
Thank you very much for that. I know that was frustrating for all. So back to so whether it's in the parking lot, at the bar, online, I've heard some guys who are like, you know what, I'm getting out. I'm hanging it up. I'm retiring early. I'm selling early. Like, it's just not what, this is unmanageable. Like, I feel their pain, but in the same token, I feel like there's a business opportunity there too, right? I mean,
there's a couple, actually. I agree with you on that, and I say there's a couple because there's two ways to handle this. You can either level yourself up as an organization, which is kind of what we did, and trust me, we were behind the 8 ball. Like, we were constantly trailing and lagging in the things that we wanted to be doing, and ultimately what that caused us to do was to develop a pace that was faster than some other people. or some other organizations. So given a long enough timeline, that increased pace started to, first we caught up, then we were even, and now we're starting to get out in front and doing things ahead of other organizations. So that's one way to go about it. And the other way, vendors like Microsoft, they're starting to get their act together. And what it looks like, in my opinion, is they're enabling smaller organizations to level up with using their infrastructure and skip years and years of technical innovation and wrapping tools together and building your own stuff. So there's an opportunity for these. Somebody could start an MSP right now and compete with me in 3 years, and I would have said that's not possible. But it is.
It's funny. It's funny that you say that, because in another realm, there's this topic of like anyone can put a website up and Wix, whatever, say, hey, I'm the guy, call me. And like, there's not a lot of barrier to entry. This whole born in the cloud, if that's the right term, right? Where like they have no investment. There is no data centers, there are no servers. They just press a couple buttons, put a credit card number in. I mean, all of a sudden, to your point that, Microsoft and other vendors just turn stuff on and you're there. Doesn't mean that you know how to press all the buttons, but it's on. A lot of it is, like it's more easier now for, let's like give you an example, right? Not too different from you back in the day. Hey, I was working in internal IT. It wasn't for me. I wanted to go out on my own. Bam, georgesit.com, right? I mean,
hang a shingle, right?
Yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, we've all gone through this, right? I mean, whether we were there ourselves or whether we're now seeing on the other end, where it's like, hey, here today, gone tomorrow, low cut price, whatever it is. There's not any. I mean, there are standards, but there's no standard for everyone. So like what's your opinion on that, right? Because like not everybody's at the same maturity level.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's actually, not only is not everyone at the same maturity level, but you're not going to stay at the same maturity level yourself, right? So a good client for you this year might be your worst client in 3 years, because maybe they don't engage with you, maybe they're just coming off of break fix and so there's lots of things to consider for sure on that front. I mean, gosh, finding the right client, it is the biggest challenge, because your prices have to match the maturity of your client and the maturity of your offering, right? So just because you're going this way doesn't mean you can charge that just yet, and we've made the mistake of, looking at peer groups or industry standards and saying, I'm going to go for that best in class gross margin. Well, I ain't ready to charge that. Or at least I wasn't back in the day, right? So I'd start getting pushback and I'd be like, okay, we're not doing this right. Something's wrong. Either we're not talking to the right clients, we're not selling it the right way, we're not prospecting the right way. So it's a lot of levers to worry about. Yeah.
So that actually brings up a good topic. Like, do you tend to build in like an auto escalator into your agreement so that every year you can kind of sneak in additional products and tools?
100%. So annual increases, hard to do when you're small and new and your clients aren't very mature. But if you don't, you're losing money. I mean, every year the prices don't go down. Your team doesn't cost less, right? So if you're not baking that in, I mean, if I were going to start at MSP today, fresh, I'd do a lot of things different. And one of those things would be baking that right in. They should know that it's going to be 5 to 8% every year. And you need to decide what components you're not going to give them a choice about, right? They're just going to put that in the back end and that's there, right? Sentinel-1, for example, or Arctic Wolf, I mean, do you need an MDR or SIEM as a service, right? Do you need security awareness training? If you do unlimited support like we do, everything that you can do, right, to reduce errors, mistakes, breakages, outages, that makes sense. So eventually you find out all the things that you just need to include. And that's one way to do it, to your point.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think some of the security things, like even 5 years ago till now, I mean, the script has been flipped, as they say. I mean, I'm starting to get the feeling like the $50, the guys who are still charging $50, $60, $75 per computer, like you just can't even operate at that price point and be able to cover the security checkboxes that
I don't know.
seemingly the insurance companies might be the ones that get everyone in the end, it seems like.
I mean, you could be. There's also, what is it, the CMMC, that whole new thing that's coming down from the Department of Defense. They're going at your revenue generators. They're saying that if you're not certified, level 3 at least, let's say, you can't bid on a project. So now I've got companies that have spent the last 20 years not doing the things that they were supposed to do, saying, oh my God, like, am I about to have to drop $200,000 to get compliant just to put out a bid? And I'm like,
No.
looks like it. Sorry, I mean, what do you want? You make bad decisions over the long term. I'm not here to bail you out. I'm here to get you to where you need to go. You got to own up to your own decisions, which frankly, a lot of clients wish that wasn't the case. And they like to work with an MSP that will subsidize those bad decisions, right? Just absorb it, keep the client happy, right? But eventually, how much of that can you take before your own organization starts to suffer, right? I mean, again, I've got 18 people. Their livelihoods are on me, right? And their families' livelihoods and homes are on me. Not to mention my other clients that are actually doing the things that I ask them to do. So I have to make a decision at some point where I say, you're going to have to sit in that bed, right, that you made. And if you don't like it, you don't like it.
It's definitely, what's the best way to say it? Cart before the horse, chicken before the egg. But at some point, they're they do meet, right? I mean, they're unstoppable force, immovable object. I got all sorts of cliches here. So let me go down this road since you pulled that feather. When do you decide whether it's a bad customer or if the team isn't delivering on the promise, right? Like we all say, hey, when I went to go buy that tool, that vendor that cold called me and I said, yeah, this sounds great. And then we're like, well, wait a minute, I was told this, that's why I bought it. And it just never happened, right? Like, what's the deal? This, your customer can say the same thing, right? Hey, you told me this was going to be easy. You told me it's going to be painless. I'm going to be able to get anybody at any time. And then all of a sudden, yeah. So how do you, I mean, listen, we never, there is such a thing as a bad customer. Like the customer's
for sure. Right. Or a bad match, right? Or a bare minimum bad match.
Yeah. So how do you begin to determine whether it's something that you can do better internally with your team because things aren't 100% where you want them, or if the customer's just complaining to complain?
I think, to be honest, we always start assuming that we're the ones messing it up. Let's just start there, right? Like, let's say this client is 100% on, they know exactly what they're talking about. What happened here, right? So we're constantly, I mean, we CSAT, customer satisfaction stuff, and NPS out the wazoo, right? So we really, really solicit that authentic feedback. And look, you can give me a really bad rating and give me some advice, but you could also give me a pretty good rating and still give me some advice, right? So I want that feedback all the time. So we are constantly evolving. We are constantly challenging ourselves to do better. We have a lot of quarterly strategy meetings with our clients. I mean, everyone that's classified as engaged is doing them at least twice a year. And the things you learn from there, they're all opportunities, right? So everything that they complain about, you take it down, you go figure out where the hitch in the giddy up is, right? In your process, you make an adjustment, you come back to them, you say, hey, we made some adjustments and we're hoping it's going to do the job. And then that next meeting you have, you come back and you revisit those things and they go, well, damn, if you guys didn't fix that problem, right? And now you've got a client that's trusting you, and they feel that they've been heard, which in today's day and age is worth its weight in gold.
100%. Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said for how much are you into organization, right? I mean, you can't be in everybody's day-to-day process, right? I mean, that's a reason why, and maybe this is the next question, like how big is big enough that it makes sense to have the inside resource versus not?
That's a tough one. I mean, when you're under 10 as a managed services provider, there's a lot of very unique challenges. People are wearing too many hats. I guarantee it. People are working too many hours. I guarantee it. There's not enough standardization because people can't run around and take that time, right, to have those conversations and get those sales and standardize the equipment and get the configurations up to speed. So on some level, You know, you got to have a good sales engine, right? You got to have new clients coming in, and they have to be the clients that the next type of client that you want, right? So as you grow and as you evolve, the client you want to work with has to change. So you always got to be bringing in those new clients so that as you refine what you're doing, the old clients can drop off the back or churn, or level up and come along for the ride with you. But it's tough when you're under 10. I feel like that's a very critical spot. Once you get on the north side of 10, you start to have lieutenants. You know what I mean? You start to have that middle tier, somebody that you can rely on, and you can step away from that role and let them step into it. That's when the magic starts to happen, to be honest. Once you have that first mid-tier leadership that's not an owner, that's when things start to fire.
No, I totally agree. So like, at what point, like finding good people's hard, right? I think as long as I've been in the technology industry, that's been between sales and marketing and finding good talent. I mean, that's
two biggest challenges.
The yin and the yang. So like, when do you decide, hey, you know what, as the owner, I need to step back from the technical operation? And then once you've made that decision, what are the qualities in the person that you want to kind of step in there and be that person?
Geez, that's tough, because I mean, personally, I wanted to step out way earlier than I could. I wanted to, I wanted to work on the big stuff. I wanted to do the thought leadership, and I wanted to do all those other things. But the truth was, I hadn't brought those lower tier people up into the management sphere. So I couldn't until that happened, which meant I had to keep doing the technical stuff, and I had to bring different individuals in different spaces, right? So we have centralized services, like for us is all the back end stuff. We've got our NOC, so our service manager is another spot, right? Then we have a virtual CIO. That's another section, right? And then we've got professional services, right? So these are all the functional business units that we're trying to massage around. And at one point, I'm doing stuff everywhere, and none of it's going all that well, but at least I know what's happening. So that next step is to bring somebody along with you and be like, look, this is what this needs to look like, right? I'm going to do it. We're going to jot it all down. We're going to document it. And then I'm going to kind of start to walk away. And I tell folks, I say, look, if you do it 80% of what I would have done, you've got my support, right? So I spend time training them on how to think about it and how to get to that end goal that we want. And then it takes some discipline, but you got to go hands off. You got to let some balls bounce. You got to clean up some messes, and you got to correct and provide some feedback, right? But if you're giving people the choice to make their own decisions, they can own it. And I find that elevates people faster than anything else.
No, I get that. I mean,
there was a second part to your question, though. I forgot what that was.
Well, that's like, what are the qualities and the character? What are you looking for in the person that's sitting in that, that's now kind of stepping into that, kind of newly created role where you're, you need to kind of take yourself away from the day-to-day operation, but you need to make sure that it's still getting done.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, self-responsibility, ownership. There's a lot of words you could throw at it, but it might be the overarching thing because it causes everything else that I like. So like if you own a role, you're going to self-analyze. How well am I doing? You're going to take that feedback, right? And you're going to change something that you're doing that's not working because you own your role. So I think that sense of ownership is probably the number one thing I'm going to look for. Because if you have the ownership, then I know that I can talk to you about that silly thing you're doing that you need to stop doing. And even if your ego gets twinged a little bit, you're going to be like, no, he's right. That's not working so good. So I need people to be able to get over themselves. And I feel like that kind of ownership mentality goes a long way in making that happen.
Yeah. Hard to find that in the beginning without getting into the mix though, right?
It is. And I'm going to tell you, George, we have a habit at Redkey of hiring people with zero technical experience from outside of the industry. You want to know what industry we like? You ready for this? Restaurants. You know why? Service mentality. Service mentality. People focused, right? If you got somebody that's focused on tech, you're forgetting that there's a person suffering on the other end of whatever that issue is. And we have had such tremendous success with these diamonds in the rough that had no formal technical, they'd never been paid $1 in their lives to do tech work. but they were still techies. Don't get me wrong, but that's not how they made their living. So we would sniff these folks out, give them a chance. And, you know, I'll tell you right now, we've got 5 or 6 people in our company right now, that's 1/3, that came up through the intern program who had zero experience. So that's how we do it. We find people with that right attitude outside of the industry and we train them up. It's so hard to find good people that have the cultural fit that you need if they've already got 10 years of experience. It's so hard.
Yeah, Brent pops in. He's like, I've heard this before. Great comment, Paul. I 100% agree.
Right on.
I mean, like, you know, unfortunately, like, you know, skills can be taught, but personality is something that, I mean, sometimes you got it, sometimes you don't. You always hear this in sales, right? You're either hungry and you know how to go out there and crack the whip, or you're just not that person, right? And I feel like, what's the best way to say this? Tech people are really logical, analytical people, but they may not be the best people communicators.
I don't know what you're talking about, George.
I don't know. I don't know.
But you're right.
They may be saying something really matter of fact, and like, but unfortunately, like, there's a translation effect, right? Between somebody
right over.
That's not super technical. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Brent says you can't teach people to care. Well, that's true.
There's some truth to that. No, that's absolutely true. I mean, one of the things that we focus on is creating a wow for our clients. And, you know, just because it's a boring technical issue, this is another thing I have to tell my folks all the time. We don't want 0 issues. Every issue is an opportunity, right? And all you have to do is you come in, you're smiling, you're happy, you're patient, you're glad to be spending your time with this person, and you're focused on getting them back to their job. And when they sense that, when they feel that, even if things are going south, it doesn't matter. Even if the problem's thorny and takes a couple of times, it doesn't matter. If they feel that empathy, along this, by the way, you have to have good customer touch points, right? You got to update people before they ask what the heck's going on. If somebody's asking for an update, I'm like, okay, we missed our customer touch point. Clearly.
So Keith, who's a regular contributor to the MSP Initiative Live, he says, interesting comment, a new way of thinking. He's like, I get my interns from classes that I monitor at Caltech. It's awesome, right? You're almost like in a really best of both worlds scenario, right?
Yeah.
And then, because like, you know, those interning, you know, like if you do the university, a lot of university programs, there's rounds, right? By the time you get in, the big companies have already swooped in, right? So if you already get them before they get there, you're already ahead. And then Keith is a ardent Dallas Cowboys fan. I don't know whether to I don't know exactly the best way to comment, other than he says, also our company culture demands loyalty to America's team. I don't know about that.
Oh, that's tough. Hey, I mean, if you're in Dallas, do what you got to do, right?
He's not. That's the funny part. Yes, as yeah, I'm sure Paul's a Giants fan. I'm sure he's not a Jets fan.
I am. I'm actually a Jets fan. Closet Jets fan.
Okay, well, you know what? That's okay. We can be friends because I'm an Eagles fan, so we'll get along.
Just there you go. Not so much hate.
There you go. Yes, you can kick those blue guys out of there. He says, I am in America. I hear you loud and clear there, Keith. Loud and clear. So how often are you researching new technologies to test out? And is there like an interval within your company where you do that? And is there somebody responsible for like that kind of, I don't know if R&D is the right word, but kind of like evaluation of new solutions?
We call it trailblazing, but yeah, I mean, R&D, that's what it is. Frankly, you know, I don't know about other MSPs out there, but we have to battle against trying too many new tools, right? Like sometimes you got to let things settle in, deal with the quirks, right? Because, you know, the change costs are high and, you know, billing integrations are all different. And so, I mean, honestly, I'd say we're probably deploying 3 or 4 new things a quarter, which is a pretty quick pace.
I agree.
You know, sometimes, you know, we're deploying, well, one of our strategies or one of our philosophies at Redkey is that we don't sell things that we don't use. Right. Because then we want to know that it's, number one, it's a good product. Number two, we want to know how to configure it so that it works correctly. And then we can support it really well. Right. So, I mean, sometimes we're installing it on us and we're racing through that to get through it so we can get our first client signed up for it, because the things are moving so fast. So yeah, I would say we're probably adding 3 to 4 new things a quarter. Not all of them are purely client facing. It could be on the back end. We might be doing something that's not really going to be invisible to the client. But yeah, I'd say 3 or 4 new things a month. And as far as who finds them, that could be almost anybody. Anyone that catches wind of something, whether at a conference or an email or a webinar or even just a networking event where somebody mentioned something cool, or even a client might have an ask that causes something to come to notice. But then our centralized services team is the one that will focus on having those first phone calls, getting the demo, setting up the first tenant, maybe deploying some NFRs, kick the tires, document the heck out of it, productize it, put it in the ConnectWise, and then we're off and running.
Because if it's not in ConnectWise, it didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
So a couple of follow-up comments came through here. Brent says 3 a quarter. Holy smoke! How are you learning products that fast?
Again, they're not all necessarily products. Believe me, we fatigue out every once in a while. I'd say 1 quarter every 3 quarters. We kind of go, oh, for God's sake, please. No more, let us, take in everything that we got and stabilize it. I don't think I'm over dramatizing this, to be honest, because we actually do have to say every once in a while, okay, we need to put that out 2 quarters, please. Like not now, not next quarter, because next quarter is already packed with stuff. So and I talked earlier about that pace where we felt like we were behind for so long that we accepted a little bit of a frantic pace in this exact place because it was the only way we could think of to catch up. And now that we're finally getting on the front side of that, maybe it'll slow down, but it doesn't seem to be.
So Darren comes behind Brent and says, curious, what are a few of the most recent new things you have deployed?
I can tell you right now, Arctic Wolf security training. We threw KnowBe4 out the window because their MSP program was just uninspired. There was no multi-tenant. It was really hard to manage, and frankly, people were pretty annoyed with the trainings. And Arctic Wolf, we're super, super happy with. We got in early on their beta. We actually reached out to them probably about 10 months ago and said, do you guys have a security awareness training? And they said, no, but under the radar, I'm going to tell you that we're working on one and we'll reach out to you guys, which is exactly what they did. And they've been a great partner on that front. So that's an example of something we just put together. We just recently switched or are in the process of switching from Hornet Security, which actually bought Email Laundry a little while ago. We're actually switching over to Vade, which is a new product, a very new philosophy on how you do spam filtering. And anyone that's listening knows that spam filtering looks like it was built in the 90s and still operates that way. No one loves it. It catches stuff it's not supposed to. It lets things through that's not supposed to. Some things get denied and you can't even find them. I mean, it's a complete beep show on that front. So, Vade is another one that we put out and we're actively doing right now. Backup Radar, another one. We need to see all of our backups in one portal. I mean, I don't know about anybody on the call, but I'd love it if I had one backup solution, but I don't. I don't. I've got Azure. I've got Acronis. I've got Datto. I've got, insert random thing here. So we need some visibility, right? So there's 3. There's 3 right now, and I'm leaving some out.
There you go.
Yeah.
I missed over a comment earlier where Brent says the Caltech student who's putting themselves through school by being in food service. Is that the ultimate? Well,
that's sure probably the ultimate, right? I mean, so it's funny. We've built out a pretty deep automated hiring process within ConnectWise. And we still use recruiters here and there for certain roles, but we always put people through this hiring. And one of the things that we do in the hiring, outside of testing how much they're reading and paying attention, we ask for things like, what was your first computer? Like, talk to me about it. What was it, right? And if they don't know or don't have one, we're kind of like, not quite what we're looking for. But half the people are like, oh yeah, this is what it was. It was this is a Pentium 2 and then we also have a section where we have them submit memes, right? Because we want to see just how connected these folks are to what's actually going on out there. And to be honest, we didn't know it, but with this whole hybrid culture thing that's erupted post-pandemic, these kinds of cultural tests before they come in are pretty critical for us managing to stay connected with things siloing and fracturing. And we've got remote only folks, we've got in office folks, and we've got hybrid folks. It's all over the place.
No, 100%. Let's talk about that for a second. Back to the, hey, good help is hard to find. I mean, now that you basically can hire from anywhere, I would hope within the country, it'd probably be a little bit easier, but have you taken that path to try and expand time coverage by hiring people in different times?
We did exactly that. In fact, we hired 4 people at the beginning of 2021. Everything just started to unclog. Clients were coming in and stuff was moving. People were looking to change jobs, excellent mobility. So we picked up a hire, our first true 100% remote hire in Chicago. I've never met this person in person. I've never shook her hand. I've never seen her. And she's a level 2, and she's, merging into our organization, and, we're figuring it out, to be honest, as we go, because it's different. It's a little slower, for example, to get them trained up and to spread the culture. So normally it takes us 3 months to get somebody into our on-call rotation, and it's taken over 6. Just because it's a little bit harder to get them, capable and aware of how to manage our clients. So that has been a challenge, but we took an opportunity for that, and we did it. And we've even got one of our longtime people moving out to San Diego in the next couple of months. So he's going to go from in-person to remote because he's proven he can do his job. And so I mean, there's a lot of movement with that, and to be honest, a lot of challenges with that situation.
Yeah, which one of those challenges seems to be, everybody had the technology to do it, but the culture part seems to be the really, really, really hard part of the remote working.
It really is. I mean, it starts with knowing how to manage somebody from 1 or 2 numbers, right? Like you need to know, and you can't steal KPIs and metrics from other organizations because they literally bubble up out of your very, very personal process, right? So you can't just, oh, what is he doing? I'm going to do that. It's not going to give you the same results, right? So once you dial in and you figure out what are those 1 or 2 things that you really, really need to pay attention to find out if that person's doing what they need to, once you figure that out, everything changes. Up until, if you don't figure that out, it's going to be tense, it's going to be confrontational, and it's going to end in a parting of ways. Guaranteed. Yeah. Just give it a long enough timeline. It won't work out.
Yeah. So if I feel like 90 days is like this textbook period to try things out. I feel like based on what you've just said, like, hey, sometimes it took us 6 months, to get them into the mix. Like, is there a right median time? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 90
I don't
days?
know, George. Yeah. I do not have that answer because, even some of the people that we did hire in those 4 months, they did move a little faster, right? So there's variance within the organization. There's variance between different people, different roles. We had one person that had a lot of trouble getting started in our virtual CIO role. And that was for completely different reasons than any of the other things that we had going on. So I think the only thing I can say about that is standards might not quite be as stable or fixed as they once were.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's tough.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
It's almost like a person by person basis, almost.
It almost is. Yeah. And, it's funny, going back to something you said a little while before, people are getting out of this business right now because it's tough. Yeah. It's not easy to do. And if you've been doing it for a long time and a lot of things are already in place and you're just like, I can't redo all this. Right. And so the good news is, and for anyone out here that fits this bill, if you're under $3 million in revenue, PE firms are still interested. Like you've got an exit, take it. Go with that. They'll look at you if you're even at 2 million. I can't believe it. And when we were first getting approached, they'd be like, "Oh, you guys are only 2 million. Like we're looking at 5 mil plus, right?" Not anymore. I mean, I know that they're looking for small firms. And yeah, if you need a way out and you sound like what I just said, I don't want to redo everything, take it. Don't be afraid. Just take the money, work for a year or two, and then get out. That's what I say.
It's not horrible advice. I mean,
Yeah.
the reality is that I think everybody thinks that they're going to do this forever, right? Retire, call it a
Right.
day,
Exactly.
it's
Yes.
all good. But I think because things have been pressed, right? I think because the outside money has entered the industry in a real way,
Yeah.
all the way down to the MSP. You almost need to understand how the game works. Not that you're like, let's say you're not even ready to make a change. Let's say you're in it for the long haul. Just understanding the process and how things are valued.
Yeah.
It's going to change the way that you do business.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we run, we were involved with Evolve and HTG for a long time. We've been involved with Paul Dipple and Sleek, right? So we've been benchmarking ourselves against industry standards, and damn straight, we are running this organization for sale, right? But we reinvest almost everything because we're still in that rapid growth mode, right? I mean, and by rapid, I mean reliably 20 to 25% a year for the last decade. 40% is hyper growth, right? And the wheels start to come off if you don't have experience managing hyper growth. And I don't. So I haven't done that. But that 20% is just enough that is kind of organic. You can kind of learn as you go, as long as you're paying attention. And yeah, so I mean, that's kind of where that has to go.
No, it's fair points. I mean, and quite frankly, if you don't know what numbers count, then you could be profitable, but when it comes to value, what your business is worth, it could be upside down from where you think it is.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that happens too often. From the seller point of view.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people are almost maybe even running at a negative, but their company is valued way different. It's mind-boggling how the math works.
I'm not the best at that. My business partner Alex is he has a little more fun with that, so that I let him run with that. But I've gleaned tons of understanding just from hearing him talk about it.
Yeah, 100%. So how much, if you were to say, it's a weird, wacky question, I'm gonna throw it out there.
Right on.
Stuff that you learned the hard way versus stuff that you learned from other people. If you were to put a percentage, did you, I would say in the beginning, you're learning a lot the hard way, but then you realize there's got to be a better way, right? I mean, the peer groups and stuff absolutely backfill some of it, right? But I'm just curious, if you were to put a guesstimate number out, what that percentage would look like.
Hard way versus easy way. I'd say for the first half of our organization's lifespan, it was probably 65 to 70% hard way, 30% easy way. We didn't trust other people. We figured we knew it better. I mean, come on, if you're going to start a business, you have some sense of independence, right? You're going to say, I can do this better. So that guided us through a lot of decisions. Some of the worst decisions we made, for example, was trying to build our own CRM. We tried to build something within our organization to manage some of what we were doing. Horrible idea. Dumped thousands of hours, thousands of dollars, and had an unworkable product, right? So to your point, that was in the 70%. Now I'd say it's flipped. Now I'd say we're doing 70% is legging up on what other people are talking about, finding out good ways to do things. Why did they do this? That's a great company. What the heck are they doing over there? And then, of course, customizing it. But to your point, I would say it's 70% easier learning, 30% go out there, cut your teeth, bleed, and find out what you got to find out the hard way. And not for nothing, but this goes along with that. Sometimes that needs to be ready, fire, aim. Sometimes, because you spend your whole time trying to plan it out, trying to spec everything you got to worry about, and you end up in paralysis mode, and you can't advance. So sometimes you got to be like, go through it, figure it out. Just don't give yourself a long timeline and go at it. And sometimes the results are really good for doing that.
No, fair. If you were to guess, fast forward to 2022, right? Like we're hopefully at the tail end of the madness.
Right.
Let's say 2022, like, the worst is behind us.
Okay.
What is 2022 and like for the short term beyond look like in terms of the conversation, right? Is it still going to be heavily cybersecurity for the people coming through the door? Is it going to be more about, hey, I want to do what you're doing, Paul. I want to hire from anywhere on the planet. I don't care where they are. If they're good people, that's what I need. Like, what are the top 2 or 3 things that you think are going to drive the conversation?
I gotta say security is still in that conversation, just because, I mean, there's already been a change. I mean, I'm already hearing a different tone about security. People aren't like, oh, I can't do multi-factor authentication. I hear we need multi-factor authentication, and there's a lot of reasons for that, right? So people are realizing, because of the public events that are going on, that they need to be on top of this. But then organizations are holding people accountable, like insurance firms or Department of Defense. They're starting to tighten up the chain from the other side. So there's no doubt in my mind that security is going to continue to lead the way. However, it's going to move from that in your way, in your face, oh God, I can't stand another barrier to doing my job, to really well integrated security, right? Like your phone if your phone is within 5 feet of your desktop, it's going to let you log in. If it's not, or you get up and walk away with your phone, your screen's going to lock, right? It's going to do geofencing and all sorts of these really smart things that don't involve a person clicking or holding a card or typing in a number, right? So I hope this is true, that you're going to see an ease of user experience backfill that security conversation. So I'm really hopeful that that's the case, because security versus ease of use is a crappy conversation.
It really, I mean, if it was so easy to do, I don't think we'd have the pushback.
Right, of course, but it's not, and it interrupts things, and hell, it breaks integrations, and it messes with APIs, and slows things down. I mean, oh my God, I didn't know I was going to be working from the airport, and that IP address isn't approved, and oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah.
So I still think that's going to lead, but I'm hopeful that it's going to be a little bit more user friendly. That would be really nice.
Yeah.
On top of that, though, WVDs, clouds, up in Azure, workstations that just spin up and down when you need, non-persistent. I think you're going to see more and more work from anywhere as well. Even though I'm not saying that people are going to be working from anywhere, it just makes sense. If your office internet goes down, why should that be a problem, right? Go home, right?
Yeah.
Go somewhere else. So resilience and redundancy there is the other piece, I think.
100%. And I think that, but with resilience and redundancy means that people are just bringing stuff from anywhere too, right?
So for sure. BYOD is off and running right now, right? Yeah. So if you're not trying to rein that in, that's a problem, right? So you don't want fully installed resources at a home user site. You want them connecting to a WVD. So the only thing, you know what I mean? You got very little security threat vectors when you're doing things like that. So that's definitely a big push.
Yeah, 100%. Paul, I can't thank you enough for letting us borrow the parking lot. I swear we did it all over the country, but some people ask for a lot more effort to get it done than others. I feel like your landlord gave you a little bit of the business. I apologize.
Oh, he did. Well, welcome to New York, man. I mean, come on, this is how we roll.
Yeah, no, that was an education, that one. I don't think I ever heard anyone try and pull that card, but hey, we made it through. It was successful. Everybody had a great time. I'm excited to, come back to the Northeast at some point now that I hope it stays open, right? Like, I know that New York City's already canceled some stuff, but you're not quite in New York City. Let's hope that it stays there. Would you, I know that there's a couple events regionally coming up. Would you like IT by Design's conferences at the end of the month in Jersey City? I don't know if that's something you'd be at, but
not sure. I'm still a little light personally on some of my conferences, but it is starting to ramp up again. So yeah, maybe we'll get to see you there. That'd be fun.
Or IT Nation, maybe down in.
I think we're planning on it. I mean, Florida's a little kooky right now, so we're gonna have to see how that all goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd like to. I would.
I hope that they all still happen, because I think we're all ready for them for sure.
We are. I know we are.
Awesome. Well, for everyone else, thanks for joining. Again, Tuesdays, Thursdays, 1:00 Eastern Time, MSP Initiative Live. This session, Sandler's having something in Huntington Beach. I don't know if Paul's ready to go to California, but if he is, along.
Sandler training, that's good stuff.
Yeah, there you go. But for everyone else, this session was recorded. It's going to be on mspinitiative.com under sessions. You can go back and take some real world advice from Paul. I think he was, kind of practical in a lot of the things that he said. And, frankly, if you're behind, I think this is a big takeaway for me. If you're behind, you can catch up, but you need to make it a point to put the gas pedal down.
That's it. That's how we got there.
And if you're not willing, if you're at the burnout mode and you're just at the point where you're not ready to go through it again, there's an exit for you.
It's a great time to sell.
There's an exit out there for you right
Yeah.
now. So don't hesitate to ask questions. And Paul, I'm sure you know, if somebody's wanting to ask you any questions or send you a message, I don't know if LinkedIn, or I don't know what the best way to get to you.
Absolutely. I love talking with other MSP owners or technology professionals and even lay folks. You know, I mean, I'll talk about this stuff all day long.
Awesome. Well, look Paul up online, definitely LinkedIn, and, you know, send in the email. All right. Thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you,
Paul,
George.
thanks again, and we'll catch you on the other side.